Good evening, I am Nerdist Human, and welcome to this guide for creating new units in Rome Total War. For this modding guide, I am focused on creating a new Amazon Infantry unit using the Amazonian Chariots as a template. But aside from making a quick unit card at the end of the video, this guide will be using assets that are already in the game, and so you can apply the principles of this example to other units that you may wish to create. Now, if you simply want to take an existing unit from the base game to the DLC, or vice versa, then there's actually already a separate video for that linked below. A warning at the start though that this guide is more advanced than many others in the series, and so you will likely need a little patience as mistakes can easily happen and it will take some trial and error. Of course, do have backups of any pertinent files before proceeding. For a comprehensive written guide, there is no blog post on Total War Heaven by Sabrosa, which takes you through the same process as this guide. I had wished to create Amazonian Infantry for my Roxolani female only campaign, and it just so happens that this guide is for exactly the unit that I wanted, so you can find a link to that blog below. Now, I've never worked with making unit cards before, and this guide really helped me to get the finishing touches to my unit, so hopefully if you have any issues, they'll be able to help you too. And lastly, before we start, if you do like what we do here on the channel, then do like, comment and subscribe to the channel. It is the support of the marvellous community here that keeps this channel going and creating lots of different videos like this one here. When inside Rome Total War, we're going to head into the data subfolder and we are going to scroll down towards the bottom where we get to export Desca unit. Once inside the file, we need to go and search for whichever unit we're going to base ours on, and in this case it is the Amazonian Chariot. So to start off with, we're going to locate this unit. We are simply going to copy and paste. Now, the complication with this particular example is that we are changing a chariot unit into an infantry style unit. So I am going to change the name first and foremost. I'm going to change this to an Amazon Infantry. And down below on the dictionary, we need to make sure that we've got a second name for it there, Amazon _ Infantry. And the semicolon here doesn't really matter for the code, it's just here to help clarity for me, the coder. Fine, so category, we now need to change this over to infantry. Most of our missile units are still classified as infantry if they are on foot. So if we have a quick example of this, if we go for class missile, here's a pelt test. You can see there that they are still category infantry, class missile. And I'm going to keep my Amazonians the same here actually. I'm going to still have their primary weapon as a missile and then give them the swords for their attack. So we are going to have to change cavalry over to infantry, and then we are going to have missile. Female voice, absolutely fine. Soldier is going to be important in our coding later. So there's our Greek Amazons. And most importantly, we need to get rid of the mount, the heavy chariot, and the mount effect. There is no more mount because we are not going to be a chariot. If you want any clarity, by the way, on any of these numbers and any of these lines of code, towards the top, there is an explanation. So for example, on soldier, it has the name of the soldier model to be used in Desca Models Battle. We're going to head in there in a little bit. For the number of ordinary soldiers in the unit, so we can set that up. Number of extras, we don't want anything there. And the collision of the men, and obviously collision is really, really important when we've got ourselves units like this. So if we head back to Amazon, just making sure that we are not editing the original unit, we're editing our unit. Yes, we can start to change this around. So this isn't the amount of troops we're going to want in an infantry unit. You'd see maybe 60, for example, in other units, 40 or 60. 60 actually for the zealots is a bit of a large number. So yeah, we probably want it to be 40,001, a bit like this, unless you want it to be an extra large troop, which you could decide to do. That could be rather interesting. Do make sure as you go along that your formatting is all making sense. Next, we move on to our attributes, and of course, we don't want to have the frightened foot and the Cantabrian circle because we, of course, are no longer a chariot. And likewise with the formation, this is going to be slightly wonky because we are working from cavalry units. So I'm just going to take that out for a moment. I'm going to leave the space to remind me that I've taken that away. What I want to do is pick another unit that's going to just give us an example to copy from. So, for example, we can let's take our Praetorians, for example, and we can grab some attributes from them. Seafaring, hide in the forest, and can sap. They have a square formation and testudo. Interesting, we don't want to have all of that, but we'll take some of that information. Let's head back down to our Amazons. And of course, remember that we are looking at the Amazon Infantry. So we're now going to put those two lines in. Seafaring, hide in the forest, can sap 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and square. You can see that if you have the formations here, it is similar for other units. That's just going to be how tight they are. So 1.2 would be a little bit looser than we have on this particular occasion. So we can add some other stats onto here. They can be hardy. They can, yes, hide, improve in the forest. So we could be better at hiding in the forest. Yeah, maybe we want to add some of that sort of stuff on. So maybe we want them to be able to sap to hide in the forest and in the long grass. Maybe we want these to be super elite. I think, though, to be honest, they're not going to be the kind who are going to be hiding in the forest. I think maybe we want to remove that. Maybe we want to go and pick something else, because I think they're going to stand brash out in the field, ready to go take people down. So what we maybe want is something more to do with their stamina. Yes, so Judean Zealots have hardy. Let's maybe just go and add that on. And of course, you can go and choose whichever of these that you wish to add on for your unit. And from there, we can start to look at the other stats. Next up is the stat health, and we must remember here that we are no longer a chariot. We should, as an infantry unit, have 0 on that particular section. And from there, we can have a look at our stats primary, for example, which is our primary weapon. We're going to keep the arrows to just keep it as simple as possible, really. And so we can happily leave that. There is no attribute to the arrows. That is absolutely fine. Okay, secondary, we can give ourselves a different weapon. At the moment, it's a slashing blade. Interesting, but maybe we want more of a piercing blade. So if we head up, yes, we can see here there's a piercing spear. There's a piercing sword on the Eastern Rebel General. So we're going to go grab that right now. We're going to grab the secondary attributes for it as well, just to keep things matching as much as possible. As long as you've got things matching, you should find minimal reason for problems. But of course, when you're making more substantial edits like this, there's a much better chance than normal that you're going to find errors. But be persistent and make sure you have that backup, and you should be absolutely fine. So we've now got ourselves a sword there, 12 attack, excellent stuff. And from there we can start to look at the armour. With regards to the primary armour, we are looking at the details of their defences. So, for example, we have the armour first, defence skill second, shield third, and fourth will simply describe the type of sound. So obviously based on whatever armour you have. So the secondary armour is details of any things like their vehicle, for example. We obviously don't need to worry about that kind of a thing. So back down to our Amazonian infantry. And this time then, what we want to do is have a little think how we want to do this. So 11 armour, that sounds reasonable. That's what they originally had. I think that we want some defence skill now that we're not on a chariot. So I'm going to give us 5 defence skill. That seems fun to me. And we have no shield, so we're going to keep it at 0, and metal makes absolute sense. Now, we need to bear in mind here that we are, if we remind ourselves here of another infantryman below, 0, 0, and in their case, they make the sound of flesh. So, yeah, we want 0, 0, and we don't actually have anything as the secondary because there is no secondary in this particular case. We are just by ourselves. And then from there, we can start to think about how we're affected by different terrains. Now, heat, we have a rating of 2. We can fiddle with that if we want to. But for the ground, I'm going to go and just simply copy what we've got above, because at the moment, stat ground is affected by the fact that we were previously a chariot. Now, I've made lots of edits one by one here, in some ways just to point out what each line means. But of course, if you do want to create a unit like this, you might simply take a very similar unit and completely copy it on in here and just change the key things you want to. obviously like the name and the soldier, for example. But by and large, you can essentially just make tiny tweaks. But I'm obviously going line by line to try and show you what it all means. So on the stat ground, in case you're interested in that one up at the top here, the stat ground, if we can ever actually find it, here we go. So it starts with the scrub, then sand, then forest, then snow. So it probably actually makes sense for us to think about a slightly different unit than the Judean Zealots, because they're obviously more of a forest, oh sorry, not a forest, a desert kind of a unit. You want to maybe find more of a forest kind of a unit, maybe more of a, slightly more cold weather unit. So let's have a little think. We can have a chosen swordsman maybe. So let's just head up towards a chosen archer warband. Okay, that seems better, doesn't it? We're going to grab them. We're going to maybe just kind of pick that as well. So head back down with Amazon and make sure we're on the right unit once again. And we'll simply put that in instead. Now, okay. Make sure you haven't got duplicates, for example. I'm actually going to put our heat on 3, so we're slightly more in the middle. And from here, we can start to look at the very last section of it. As for the last section, then, we want to have a little look at stat mental. This is quite important. Morale of 12 is maximum. I think that's fair enough for this. And they are normal and untrained. So, for example, this could be impetuous and untrained. It could, if it was mercenary peltest here, be highly trained, which I think is going to make sense for us. So we're going to give us highly trained here. And as for normal, well, if we keep looking up, you can, for example, get disciplined. So we'll grab disciplined as well. I think that's going to make sense for our unit. As for the next section here, the charge distance, this is pretty much always set at 40 for most units. Things like javelins or archers tend to have 30 actually. So maybe we'll put it at 30, but we are going to be more primarily an infantry unit, just one that can actually shoot. The fire delay isn't really going to be too relevant to us. You can always, for example, go to a bowman and have a little look, but you'll notice it is 0. I think this is to do with stuff that was never actually really activated in the game, because there was a food idea to be in the game originally, but they got rid of it before the final game came out. Now, the stat cost, though, is quite interesting, and it's something you might want to take good consideration for. So the stat cost, for example, is number of turns to build, the cost of the unit to construct, the cost of upkeep, the cost to upgrade weapons, cost to upgrade armor, and the cost for custom battles. Now, that can pretty much be whatever you want it to be. In the case of this unit, I want it to be similar because it is already the Amazonian chariots. So Amazonian infantry are going to be quite similar, but I think because there's no chariot involved, maybe we can just make it a tiny bit cheaper. So 700 over there. We can leave, I think, the other costs pretty much as they are actually. And upkeep, yeah, I think that'll be reasonable. So ownership is currently slave, which is the rebels. That's technically the name that they have. I am going to add it to another unit, to another faction, just to highlight that we can do that. So Armenia, we'll add them in as well. Do just check how names are, or how factions are referred to in the files, just to make sure nothing silly happens. But yes, you can see there, that is absolutely fine. So heading back down to our chariots, it looks like at this point we are pretty much ready to go. There is a couple other things I just want to maybe tweak though. Before we finish up in here then, I will just point out that I changed the attributes slightly. I added sapping, and I decided, to be honest, it did make sense for the Amazonians to be ambushes, because that's exactly what they do to you in the game up in Themyscira. So they're back in, although of course you can pretty much do whatever you want. Most importantly though, before we leave, we need to look at this line here, the soldier, because the next file we need to change is the Deska models battle file. And in there it will refer to the Greek Amazons, which is the soldier file for the Amazonian chariots. But of course that's on a chariot. That's going to cause us some problems when it comes to the melee side of things. So we actually need to create a new soldier. So we can, rather than rebel Amazons, we can put, or Greek Amazons, we can put rebel _ Amazons _ infantry, and that way we have ourselves our own little description there. And now we need to save this up, head into the other file in order to create this soldier type. From export Deska unit then, we need to head back up the file to Deska model battle. And from here, we can of course make the changes we need. Once inside the file then, we need to search for the base unit that we are going to be editing. So we start off with the Greek Amazons. And of course, the first thing I want to do is copy that straight on in. First thing we need to do is change the type, the soldier type, to the name that we just created. Now the game will know to reference the unit in the other file to this particular description. Now at the moment, most of these models and sprites are already what we want, but we do need to change the skeleton here. All we really need to change is the skeleton here. At the moment, the skeleton is based around the chariot, so we are going to take this little section here and we're going to make it a semi-fast archer when it's in its first weapon mode. And for the chariot, for the sword, we want to search for some kind of other swordsman, so let's just maybe search for that. And not going to work for us because it's on horse. We have FS swordsman. Well, we could probably actually do it similar to what it just was. So if we head back up to our chariot here, yeah, let's go with, we could do FS swordsman, but let's do FS semi-fast swordsman. I think that will be fine. We'll just make it semi-fast archer, semi-fast swordsman. And at that point, we're actually in a good position here to save this up and to try and load the battle. Here we are then in battle with our magnificent Amazonian infantry. Of course, they are still arrow firers first and foremost. Pink Pajama Men, of course, coming in to be shot down. Marvellous. Did get some of the our Armenian friends as well, because I did add them onto the unit list. Of course, they are going to slaughter with those arrows, so let's actually send them in to battle because, yes, we want to see those swords in play as well. So let's speed that up, let them get a little bit closer. Oh yeah, they are not... Those Pajama Men do not want to do this. I don't really blame them because, oh, they're running straight towards the Armenians. Oh, that is excellent. And look at them with their swords out. Oh, yeah, that is magnificent, he says as he clicks away. So there we are. Now we're going to chop them down with our swords. This is beautiful. Oh, yeah. So the Amazonians are actually in some ways surprisingly simple to get to work here. And it's a pretty nice unit. I'll be using them in my Roxolani campaign, my female only, of course. So if you want to see more of them in action, I will be using them in that series. Not really sure when this video comes out in relation to that one. So it might have been a long time back at this stage, but who knows? There's a very quick victory. Not surprisingly. We do still have a little bit of work to do with regards to sprites, some of the unit cards and some of the information. So with it all working out, let's perhaps head back into the files and tidy that up. But of course, if you do simply, if you're happy enough with it as it is, then great. You've got them working in battles already. From Deska Model Battle then, we're going to scroll back up the data folder until we reach the subfolders. We need the text folder open, and we're going to head down towards the bottom toward export_units. Once inside the file, you simply need to head all the way down to the bottom to add in your entry. I've put in the unit name here, Amazon Infantry, followed by the proper name of it here without the underscore. Now, you simply need to follow the formatting of the other examples in the file here. And of course, you do need to remember the brackets and the underscore description and underscore description short. Now, once you've done that, really all you need to do is write your own description for the unit. And this little start part here is basically describing some of its special abilities. You can add more detail if you want. Again, just take some hints from similar units earlier in the file. Basically, you can see it written on any of these units, and if you want to get it all perfect, spend a bit more time doing it. For now, I've just selected some of its traits and dumped it in before the description. So for this unit, I've simply added in my own description. I've made sure to format it carefully, get my spelling correct, and from there I'm going to save up the file. Before we finish up with the unit cards, I do want to make sure that we can recruit these, because the unit cards will take just a tiny bit more work. So back into data, and if we scroll down, we will eventually find export Deska buildings, and this is the file that we need to be opening. Once inside the file, then we need to pick a building type to make the unit recruitable. So we're going to head into the barracks. Now, this is actually quite an elite unit, so I probably wouldn't put it this early, but for the sake of this example, we are going to do so. So I'm just going to paste in the name of my unit, Amazon Infantry there, and then I'm going to copy the line just to make sure this is a smaller chance of a mistake as possible, because it is very easy to make mistakes, particularly in this particular folder. So Eastern we're going to change to Armenia, making sure to spell correctly. That's always of key importance in this file. So we can now get this unit recruited, but if you do want to make sure you're careful about this going forward, if you upgrade that barracks, you'd want to be able to still recruit it, so you do need to go and chunk that in. So you'll need to do it for each different level of the building, which is many in this particular case. So there's some Armenian infantry, so we'll just fit it in with the other Armenian troops just to kind of make this work as much as possible and make them easy enough to find. And at this point, I think there we go, we should have the final level of buildings. If you are interested, you can maybe add 1 experience on at this point, because we are on the top level of barracks at this stage. And that's what we have to do to make them actually recruitable. Let's save it up. At this stage then, the game is running nicely. We have our unit, but we do need a picture here. Now, there is one slight issue with this, which is that we aren't going to get any good images from the game files to do this. You can run it like this, but you can of course also try and create your own. To do that, you might well just want to get a screenshot. So I think I'm the Falksman. I would quite like to try and get a fairly decent little screenshot, if possible, to try and get the best picture we can. So I do have this bit here. That's a start, I suppose. Would be nice to try and get a picture of them with the sword as well. They're going to get their swords out momentarily for this here battle. So as they get their swords out, we might be able to find someone along here who is going to give us a good picture. But ultimately, yes, you might be able to do the job. Unfortunately, this person's in the background. So we're going to try and get a picture, basically. And this is kind of the job at this point, is to try and find a good picture for you to then go and edit. Once you have your screenshot, you can of course go into Photoshop and fiddle around with it so that you have yourself a small unit card like this, and from here we can simply change it into the type of file that we need. There are usually lots of online options to convert your PNGs over to TGA, for example, as we need here today. I've got my Amazon_infantry_info ready to go, so I'm going to insert that into there, and from here we can get the file that we need. The second example needs to be a different size, 48 by 64, so I'm going to take this one this time, which is named #Amazon_infantry, because that's the way we're going to need it named when we get it converted. So once again, we're going to convert it using this tool. Now we have the files we need to put them in the right place. So I'm going to take Amazon_infantry_info, which is the bigger of the two. We are going to copy that, and from there we need to head back into our Rome Total War data folder. And we need to go into UI, into unit info, and into Armenia, because that's the faction we have given it to. We'll give it over to the rebels as well. So into slave, paste it into there. The other file, which was #Amazon_infantry.tga, that one needs to be copied, and likewise back in towards data, into the UI folder, and this time into units. From there we once again need to paste it in. You'll know which one's which, by the way, because you've got the little hashtag either way. And again we're going to put it into the slaves folder, and now we should be all ready to go. Here we are then as Armenia, testing out our unit, and of course there is our Amazonian infantry. Okay, fine, the colour isn't matching up. We do need to just potentially work on that if we want to make this look perfect. But hey ho, you know what, I'm happy enough with this for now. That's a pretty badass looking picture, and it does work out nicely. Let's get that trained up. We've got our abilities at a glance here. We've got our description, Excellent stuff. And if we end our turn, there we go, we've hired it up as well. Yes, this particular picture down here for the smaller unit card, this one we need a different colour background as well. So that might be something that I plan to do in time, go back into Photoshop and give it a little edit before I transfer it over to TGA. But you know what? As a throw together unit, I think we've done plenty enough for today. You'll see more of this unit on the Roxolani campaign, where presumably I will have at some point have edited this little card as well. But I think you certainly get the idea. This little character here, this unit is looking pretty darn grand. With this guide, hopefully you too can be set free to the modding world to create fun new units for Rome. And if you are on the channel Discord, then I'd love to see your creations there. I'll post mine and some of the more questionable bits of modding results too. If you do like what we do here on the channel, then do consider becoming a member either here or on Patreon. Aside from the aforementioned Discord, we have the monthly podcast where I discuss what's going on at the channel, and from tier 2 upwards, our Cretan archers, they get an extra thanks at the end of my videos. And this kind of video in particular can take quite a lot of work to put together, and so support really does make such a big difference. So thank you to all of those kind supporters, and maybe we'll have a few more joining us soon. I should point out, by the way, that in the end I did actually remove the background colour to make the unit card fit properly, and whilst it does take a little Photoshop editing, I think it is worth the extra effort. Finally, do let me know what other modding guides you'd be interested in seeing in the future. There's always so much we can do with marvellous old games like this. But for now, it is time to leave you. Thank you all for watching. I am Human, and for now, it's goodbye from me. Suffice to say, I could be doing a better job of, not burning down my own city. That's the kind of hit we want. Let it not be said that our emperor doesn't lead from the very front to hack down the peasants. This is about to go horrendously wrong. It's absolutely fine. It just gives these guys a reminder to maybe aim better next time.